but I'm making a record of this for Gradesa so she can have that later on. When we go into our breakout session to discuss next steps, I will stop recording. I'll pause the recording so that can be a confidential conference. So first of all, I want to thank you very much for being a part of this. Gardner-Webb University is indebted to you for taking time out to be a part of one of our dissertation committees. We know it's a lot going on in Vance County right now. We know we're taking you away from some duties, but we know that you are contributing to an excellent candidate who is going to serve and continue to serve Vance County well. Gradesa I've known now for over a year. She and I have worked together on her project and her dissertation. She is a hardworking person. I can tell you that. You already know that she will give it 110%. She has the most beautiful smile of anybody. She will welcome, she will make the day much brighter just smiling. So, but it has been a pleasure working with her. And I do want to commend her and commend Vance County because she does speak extremely highly of you and the county. She really does. She is very proud to be a part of Vance County. So that said, the format today, we're going to turn it over to her and she will start doing her PowerPoint presentation. At the end of that, we'll take questions and then we will go into a breakout room where we will discuss next steps. And our next steps will be determining whether she can move forward with conditions, moving forward without conditions, or whether or not we'd like to meet again before we approve. What happens after this, if we approve today moving forward, Gradesa will then go through the IRB process here at Gardner-Webb and will begin her research once that's been approved. And then sometime in March, hopefully, or early March, we will pull this committee together again to do the final defense. And at that point, congratulate Gradesa for a lot of hard work. Now, I know this is probably the most intensive, most nerve-wracking time, Gradesa, so just breathe deeply, have a glass of water in front of you. You got this. You are looking at very friendly faces. And I promise you that we are all about your promotion and making sure that you cross over this threshold. So that said, I will turn it over to you if you want to start screen sharing.
Okay. Good afternoon, team members. I want to first thank you all so graciously for being here this afternoon to support an aspiring doctorate student. And I look forward to your feedback on ways to continue through this process. This has been an exciting experience for me, and I'm so grateful. And when you pick people to walk you through this process, you got to pick the right people. And things always happen for a reason. And so it put me in a place to pick the right people. And so before I begin my presentation, I would just ask that if you have any questions while I'm presenting, if you would please ask the questions at that time. I would greatly appreciate it. During the presentation, I'll also be referencing my chapters 1, 2, and 3 throughout the process. And so why did I choose, this topic? I spoke about the right people, the right time, but I also had an experience, my first professional development session here as a principal. And I went to a math PD and I was able to really interact with a lot of secondary math teachers who were not from America. And I was thoroughly impressed with the conversations, the depth of information we were getting into, and I had to learn more about their process of getting to America to become educators. I also am interested in this topic because I recognize the seriousness of teacher shortage in rural school districts. And all schools have a shortage, but it's more prevalent in urban and rural school districts. And so I began looking into this topic and learned so much. In fact, I don't think our forefathers realized when they developed the Fulbright-Hays Act in 1946, which was written at the time as a purpose for rebranding America following World War II. And America was getting over the wind, and we were wanting to show a more unified approach and collaborate amongst other countries. And so there came this program. In 2020, who would have imagined that same format or tenet that began in 1946 is something that we are using to support our students and to address the teacher shortage. And so with that, I began to really look into, well, what are the problems? What do I see as the problems? And I alluded to this already, that we need more teachers. We need more teachers in urban and rural schools. We need a solution for teacher shortage that is sustainable. And as I explained the exchange visitor program a little bit more, the issue of sustainability will become more evident. And lastly, we need to look at the problem of the increased use of the Fulbright-Hays Act of 1946. I lift that up because even in 2013, the United States government was seeking feedback. They were looking to provide some additional rules and updates to the act. And it was proposed that people could provide support, could provide feedback on ways to avoid the occasional excessive use of the exchange visitor program. And so as they are seeking this feedback in 2013, it's in the midst of our Great Recession. And so at that point we are, and as I think in 2020, we're in need of teachers. And so though there are some concerns about that aspect of the program, today I want to really hopefully hone in on the benefits, and the ultimate goal of my work is to look at ways that this can be sustainable. And so with that, I want to just clarify, what is the Fulbright-Hays Act of 1946? What is the Fulbright-Hays Act of 1946? That act originated after the World War II. It was then renamed in 1961 as the Mutual Educational and Cultural Exchange Act of 1961. For short, it's often referenced as the Exchange Act of 1961. So as I go through the presentation, I'll clarify some of the differences in the act, but the premise of it, regardless of what we refer to it is the cultural exchange amongst countries. In addition to looking at the problem, I also was able to identify some data points that really speak to the issue facing rural schools. Not sure if you're aware that public schools are the top employer in 59 counties in North Carolina. But because they're small counties, they equate communities. They're not oftentimes sought after by researchers and policy analysts. 1/2 of our school districts, 1/3 of our schools, and 1/5 of our students in the United States are in a rural area. In our home state of North Carolina, over 500,000 rural students are in attendance of our schools, which makes us the second largest rural student population, next to Texas. And of the 180 counties that we have in our state, 80 of them are rural. And so 40% of our state's public school students reside in rural counties. 87 of our 115 public school districts are rural counties. And what is so important to understand is that in those rural counties, these school jobs provide opportunities for people living in their communities. Even more importantly, if you look at and consider the number of teachers that were lost in a 5-year span, according to a report by Coming of Crisis, you're looking at about 240,000 teachers, 35% reduction in teachers who enrolled. So that would mean if each teacher would have had about 20 students in their future classroom after graduating, that would have been about 5.2 million children who could have had exposure to an educator just from that 5-year reduction of persons interested in the program. Additionally, in North Carolina, there's a report that is conducted each year called the North Carolina Annual Report on the State of Teaching Profession. And from the data, you'll see that using 1819's data, there have been some significant differences. Lifting up in particular, of the 94,000 plus employees, there was a 7.5% attrition rate. And we know that teachers move from district to district. But if we dig a little bit deeper into those numbers, this is powerful. 78,000+ were experienced licensed teachers, and wonderful. We didn't lose any more than 6.8% of those. But then we have our beginning teachers. And keeping in mind that this 2018-19 data falls in line with our crisis of the deduction or reduction of applicants into the schools of education. And so of those young people who did take a chance and pursue education, about 15,691 of those beginning teachers, 1,768 decided to leave. 11.3% left. Now, some would say, but wait a minute, you've got so many more experienced teachers, but with experienced teachers, they have the next level of a job title. And that next level is retired teacher. And so we need our 1,700 plus to remain in that 16,000 plus to replace our retirees. So as you see through the data, the concern is relevant. The North Carolina report in 2020 also addressed the visiting international faculty, international teachers, VIFs. And though there were about 1,300 employed, 15% of those teachers, there was a 15% attrition rate. Well, that does make sense in regards to the program, but it also speaks back to my question of the problem is the sustainability of the program. What was even more interesting was of those VIFs, 11% left before their contract ended. And so as you look at this data, you'll also see some specific reasons for the attrition, and the greatest area is personal reasons. And so that is something, I'm sure we could dig deeper in, but my focus today is just looking at ways to support our rural schools. And the communities are the hubs. I went to a school in a rural community. And if you think about the fall festival and how that brings the community get together, people use the school for so many things. People are proud of their jobs as educators or teachers or the custodian or the janitor. That's their reputation. They're proud of this. And even though there's all those warm and fuzzies of our wonderful communities in rural areas, it is still difficult to compete fiscally with larger areas who are able to offer incentive packages and more pay. So here I am at this study. I wanted to know more. And so in this process, I'm going to be looking at defining teacher shortage, defining the Federal Exchange Visitor Program, and making known and interpreting the lived experiences of a purposeful sample of exchange teachers in this rural school district. I'll also examine the visitor program, teacher experience, and from the perspective of the emotional complexity of that transition, while at the same time they're having to establish positive working relationships with their colleagues and their students, who in turn they are working to provide outcomes, positive student achievement outcomes. And also to just clarify the program from the perspective of the participants, as well as the hosting school districts. So I thought it would be important to just kind of provide a little bit of background in regards to the Mutual Educational Cultural Exchange Act of 1961. The act, as I gave you a little bit of history, originated for the Fulbright-Hays Act of 1946. The Exchange Act has 15 different categories, and you can see what those different categories are. The category that I am focusing on is the area of teachers, and that area is referenced as Exchange Visitor Program. And it requires a J-1 visa in order to participate in any of the 15 categories. But again, I'm focusing today on the teachers. And so as of today, they don't monitor the number of J-1 visas that are available, even since the program originated. But what they do monitor is the certificates of eligibility. The Department of State provides those, and that is what they regulate yearly. The magnitude of this program, the magnitude of the exchange program, I'm just going to lift up some data points just to get the sense of how much has this been used. And the data I'm looking at is from 2019. There were 3,454 new teacher exchange visitors, and they represented 200 countries in the United States that visited from other countries coming into the United States. Of the 5 top sending countries, it was number 1 was Philippines, and they sent 932 exchange visitors. Jamaica was number 2. They sent 383 visitors. China, 223. India, 176. And Colombia in 2019 sent 174 teachers. Typically, the age range of those educators are about 30 to 53. 80% of them are in that age range. And when it comes to which states are receiving the exchange visitor participants, those states that received the most, North Carolina, received in that year 565 of the visitors, followed by California with 315 of the visitors, then followed by South Carolina, Texas, and Florida. And so that just wanted to show the magnitude of the program, how many countries are involved, and how much North Carolina is using the program. So I had to do a little bit more digging into the information. And so when I thought about, I shared some statistics about the teacher shortage, and then the 18-19 school year, I think it was about 4,315 teachers who left for personal reasons. And so if you think about that, and if each of those teachers who left had about 22 students on average, we're looking at 94,930 students who were impacted by that loss in just that time frame. And so just really speaking to the magnitude of having a high quality teacher, as stated by the Secretary Margaret Spellings, and she was quoted as saying, one of the most important factors in raising student achievement is highly qualified teachers. And so it is just so important in understanding the need for a highly qualified teacher. And so for my work, I developed a conceptual framework to explain my thinking around this work and to show the relationships of the different variables. And so you see that there's 3 entities, a world of educators, there is the actual EVP program, and we have rural school districts. And so the ultimate experience of participating in the EVP is the cultural exchange benefit for the participants who come to America. And the ultimate benefit for our rural school districts is, of course, there is the cultural exchange benefit, but there's also the support of decreasing teacher shortage. With the world of educators, it increases the global footprint of our educators being able to expand their reach to other countries. And it's also important because cultural diversity is an important component of a positive student-teacher relationship. And so our world of educators support our students' global awareness. And in essence, not only their global awareness, it supports our efforts at schools to produce students who are demonstrating growth academically, student achievement. And so that was my conceptual thinking around this work. Theoretically, I focused my thinking around the learning process of the adult. And in essence, even though the framework of constructivism definitely is used to talk about student learning, I see my EVP participant also as a learner, because the EVP person is coming into a new country, they're entering a new culture of pedagogy. We won't even begin to talk about the culture of just their new community where they will reside. And so understanding the constructing their new reality based on their experiences and their collaborative interactions currently with the new people they're meeting is really, really important, not just to student relationships, but to their own growth in this profession. And so keeping in mind, they don't get a cushion. They don't get, oh, you have 1 year to master this, and then we will begin in exposing you to our American pedagogy. They come to America with their educational background and the experience they have, and they come in and do the work that needs to be done, recognizing the complexity of the process. Theoretically, if you think about it, and I kind of tease this out a little bit, the learner, the EVP's reality is that they're in a new culture, and they have constructed from their learning experience or their knowledge, their thoughts of their reality. Both their experiences before they came to America as an educator and now in this new normal for them during this experience, which is the same thing that happens for our students as they evolve through different learning environments. And I would even say that this recent experience is a good example of how children's background experiences and how they've had to construct a new reality to support themselves through this new environment of learning. And the relevance of this is it impacts, I apologize, let me slow down. I'm going too fast.
Take a deep breath.
Yes, sir, thank you. All right, social constructivism. Vygotsky's social constructivism theory emphasized the collaborative nature of learning. And I really think that I chose this support for my work because of that fact, the nature of the collaborativeness that is required for the EVP participant to matriculate into a new experience. And so that is why I chose that. In the context of an EVP participant who themselves are experiencing a new social construct, we know that according to Mann, that teachers must be intuitive and lead their pupils' minds to discover what they need to know and then supply them with what they require. So if you think about that in the context of someone who is new, a new environment, who's having to do that level of work to build a relationship with a student, this takes a very skilled person to go through the EVP process. And so we know it's the duty of the teacher to know how to utilize their surroundings and physical space and extract from them ways to contribute to the learning experience. And I lift all these things up also from the perspective of the EVP participant, who themselves are having to utilize the surroundings and physical and social environment to extract from that, to contribute to their matriculation into a new environment. And so it's that blurred lens of reality that I'm really interested in looking more into for the EVP participants. Not to mention, in this work that they're doing and having to establish the student-teacher relationships is the dialects, the general nuances that they have to learn to build those relationships. Another area I had to look into was program evaluation. For my work, I've chosen to use the CIP, or Context, Input, Process, and Product Program Evaluation. And a program evaluation, as you all know, is a systematic method for collecting, analyzing, and using information to answer questions about a project, policies, or a program. And so I thought that this would be the best approach. And so we know that formative and summative evaluations are necessary. Formative evaluation refers to information that is used to improve the instruction, the project, and the process. It's for monitoring instructional processes and learning progress, whereas summative ensures whether the process had been carried out and we met the objectives. And both of these evaluations take place whenever we conduct an evaluation exercise. And that will be the case of my work when I use the CIP program evaluation model. Next, is just a little bit of information about context, input, process, and product. And I'm going to allude to that when I get to my research questions and which aspect of those align, of my questions align to those pieces of the CIP program evaluation for the sake of time. The other area I looked into was the overview of just teacher shortage in general. And as I did the research, I realized that there were 4 main areas. The number of students who are interested in becoming educators, that number continues to drop. They have a lower than average achievement level, particularly in STEM, the students. The interest among males is low, and there's a lack of diversity amongst the students. And this was data collected by ACT from student interest surveys, and they do this frequently. And in reality, if you think about it, you're having fewer students who are demonstrating an interest in going into the educational program. You're then having fewer students going from the educational program into the profession. And one thing that is even more alarming is if you think about it, the students are sometimes not even reaching the proper readiness for college according to the ACT. And so you have a population of students who are being taught perhaps by someone who is not qualified to build them up, to prepare them to become an educator. And so you've got that conundrum in the labor world, in that you're preparing high school students to be successful in college, okay? By a highly qualified teacher. However, in some of our districts, our students are operating in a district that has few teachers. And these students are not receiving a high quality education. Additionally, it's interesting that I would speculate their perspective or their perception of the profession could be tainted by their own experience in school with the teacher coming and going frequently especially for our students in rural school districts. And more specifically, the Great Recession of 2008-2012 came upon us. And there was a lot of, I don't think I ever knew pink slips to be ever used in education, but that became a phenomenon that happened. We began cutting teacher positions. And so that also impacted the teacher shortage. However, the teacher shortage is not, this shortage that I'm referencing is not in regards to the positions that were cut during the Great Recession. I've spoken about the teacher enrollment, students enrolling in teacher education programs and the readiness of high school students. So just making it clear that it's not about just the students or teachers or educators we lost during the Great Recession. However, during that time frame, it was indicated that there were 4 reasons for our drop in teacher availability. Of course, teacher preparation enrollment, an effort to return our pre-recession course offerings. And so those schools that dropped programs and cut employees as the recession receded and things began to loosen up and funding became more available, there became a need for returning those programs. And now we don't have the educators for those programs. Also, there's an increase in student population. At the time of the report that I'm referencing here, they projected a 4% increase of students across the United States. And that meant we would be moving from about 45 million students to 50 million students in 2020, yet not having adequate teacher. And of course, I've spoke to the high teacher attrition, which, according to this report, was the most important factor in regards to the issue. Fulbright-Hays Act of 1946. I just lifted up some highlights of the program, and when you compare it to the highlights of the program that was then written into law by President Kennedy on September 21st, 1961, the foundation is clear, that it's about cultural exchange and ensuring that we promote international cooperation for education and cultural advancement, and to assist in the development of friendly, sympathetic, peaceful relations among the United States and other countries of our world. And what was even more interesting, and I just want to share, I found it so interesting when I looked at this historical components of this, is that the namesake of the Fulbright Act, he said that the reason he really developed the act was to avoid a nuclear war. And he felt that if you were providing opportunities for people to get to know each other, that we could alleviate that issue. And you can also read in this most recent iteration, you can see that that could be the basis of it as well. And peaceful relations, you know, we get to see each other's worlds, our countries. And so I thought that was just quite interesting. As I stated before, there are 15 categories, and for this study, I'm focusing on the EVP, which is the teacher component. The EVP program also has a program sponsor. It's a very important part of the process, and the program sponsor is the person who coordinates with the EVP participant. They are basically that go-between between the federal government and the visa-seeking teacher and that hosting school site. Hosting school site is referred to as the host organization. And for the context of my study, I'm referring to, I'm looking at it from the perspective of schools. However, businesses, camps, and other entities can also serve as a host organization. And basically, the host organization is who provides the internship, the training, and works with the exchange visitor throughout their stay. So as I did this work, there were some thoughts I had to ponder that led me to my research questions. Just in general, I won't read all of these to you, but just to get an idea of what I was thinking, you know, perhaps this will give other school districts who are interested insight on this process of how to use this program. I'm just curious about establishing a sustainable balance between the true tenets of the EVP program and our dire need to hire teachers, and how do you establish sustainability when you have that 3 to 5 year rotation? So then I got to my research questions. And the research questions for this dissertation are as follows. How does one's work ethics and cultural background impact the experience of a J1 teacher transitioning into an American rural school? Number 2, how do J1 teachers who are transitioning into an American rural school establish student-teacher relationships? And number 3, how effective is the implementation of the exchange visitor program as measured by J1 teachers' perceived reason for being in the program and the reality of their placement? I then identified the aspect of the CIP process that aligns to the question, and I also went ahead and began to research some research tools that could be used to address each of those questions, looking at talent surveys for a survey, looking for interview questions, question 2, using a focus group questionnaire process, and for question 3, using the results from the focus group, and also being able to use teacher working condition survey data. Just to lift up again the significance of the EVP program, most recently in 2020, this July, our president had signed an executive order to suspend granting certain temporary workers visas. And the magnitude of this need for this program is beyond North Carolina, as I've stated. And the governor of the state of Nevada actually wrote pleading in so many ways for the president to reconsider. And in his statements, he expressed why this program was so important for his students. He revealed that it just was so significant from a perspective of the cultural enrichment that his students in his state would receive, and just the need for the educators. And so this also explained some of my rationale for wanting to pursue this topic. The rural district, a little bit about the district, is persistent achievement gaps between various subgroups with a pattern of unequal access, opportunities, and outcomes, which can be predicted by race, and it's often more prevalent patterns of achievement deficits in our lowest performing schools. There are poverty, inadequate shelter, clothing, medical care concerns, and the district is comprised of 14 schools. And I've identified the different types of schools. And there's a new virtual K-12. Because the teachers at the virtual school are contracted from other schools, they will not be included in the study. With the V1 visa teachers who originated from many countries, we know that, but for this program, this dissertation, I will be focusing on Jamaican educators. Basically, my methodology will include the program evaluation process, looking at qualitative data, interviewing, a survey, a focus group, looking at the perspectives of the participants or analyzing their responses to assess their perspectives, and then quantitative teacher working conditions survey data, preferably for just the participants. I have a proposed timeline. The proposed timeline is in December to focus on identifying research tools, finalizing a selection of a survey tool, and of course, requesting permission to use that tool, communicating with district leaders in regards to the intent of the program evaluation in the month of January, having completed the IRB, getting permission to proceed with collection of data, working with interviews, and gathering some input for the input aspect of my program evaluation. 5 more minutes. And just some demographic information being needed. Into February, this just continues to expand out some of the things I will be doing, and it also outlines in regards to the CIP process. And by March, having all of the results shared with all the appropriate constituents, and having document written accordingly, and sharing those findings. So some of the limitations to the study are biases of the research evaluator, biases of the host organization, or biases of the program participants. There may be data that I'm not able to get. I would really like to get the teaching working conditions survey results for my participants only. There could be a low response rate for the survey, as well as a low participation in the focus group. A change in the number of participants eligible to participate could be an issue, in that the issue of eligible participants is a concern in that before being overturned, the current federal administration halted all of the new J-1 visas for the 2021 school year. Though that has been changed, that could be an issue, a limitation. Delimitations include the researcher just not being able to engage with all of the eligible EVP participants during my focus group. So that would mean the researcher, myself, would have to define the study's parameters. And so I've decided to limit it to just the Jamaican teachers at the secondary level to hopefully avoid that issue. And another delimitations is that I work in the district that I am studying the educators. Here I've just included some examples of the question instrument I would like to use. Again, seeking permission to use these, as well as examples of the survey tools I would like to use. Again, seeking permission, as well as focus group questions that I've already felt would be supportive of this dissertation. And at that point, I will take any questions that you may have.
Okay, Gradesa, I think you can stop sharing.
Okay.
All right, at this point, committee members only. Are there any questions or anything we want to share with Gradesa before we go into our breakout session? Further conversation. Well, I've never been around this many central office people without questions or comments, so I'm going to count that as a yes. And at that point, if that's okay with everyone, we will go into a breakout session. I will be inviting you, Dr. Jackson, Dr. Brooks, Dr. Bennett, Gradesa, you hang around, talk with your buddies, and we should be back if I can get this breakout room correct. So there'll be 2 rooms. I'm going to manually place you. We got 1, 2, 2. All right. Dr. Bennett, did I do it right to get people out of your breakout room? Okay. All right. Well, here we come. I was getting a little afraid. that I'd messed it up or something, and I'm really bad about that. And I have turned the recording back on. So now that your committee is back, Gradesa, we are pleased to tell you that we're ready to move forward. There are some things you and I can talk about at the end if you will stick around, but overall, the committee is very pleased with where you're going. They wish you well, keeping the fingers crossed that you will be able to make sure it happens, and I'll let them speak to you as well. But stick around at the end of this so you and I can talk.
Gradesa, looking forward to your work. You're going to do fine.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Gradesa, congratulations. We knew you could do it. You're very excited about this topic, and it shows through. Remember, you are trying to get to conclusions and findings, so there's a lot that you can study about. You'll be talking about some specifics on just narrowing the focus a little bit so that you can actually get through when it comes to finding conclusions and findings and all of that. If you need us, we're right here. Dr. Jackson does not have to play Santa Claus this year, so he's readily available all week. No, but we are right here. You have our contact information.
Yes, ma'am.
So try to get some rest and get back to it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Gradesa, I as well want to say congratulations. It's a big hurdle that you've stepped over, although there are a few more. You are well on your way. You've done a lot of hard work, that's obvious. It is a big study. As Dr. Brooks said, just blind along, move forward. You know what it is that you are trying to answer. And as a district, we look forward to your findings and how we can apply those to our work here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a Merry Christmas and stay safe, mask, all that kind of stuff. So stay safe and we can see you in March. Gradesa, if you'll hang around.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
everybody.